Hi everyone, and thank you for being with me. And we just had Daniel on board, so it's another technical hitch which I endeavoured to overcome, and I have, because basically I'm a genius. No, I left something unticked that I should have ticked, and so forth. Blah 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 blah. Everybody knows that I have technical problems with my own sense of reality, I think. So anyway, thanks for being with me. A lot of people on board. That's really great to see. And I just need to start with Cosmin. And Cosmin, thank you very much. Cosmin is actually the first person who has just become a member. So I started my membership about an hour ago, and Cosmin's joined for the mere fee of $10 a month. Really appreciate it. So I need to talk a little bit about what it is that I plan to do in relation to the membership. I plan to do a special feed either with myself alone or with Avery to discuss issues that I think are important to all of us, but particularly in relation to the membership, and particularly to have a conversation with our members about certain things, sort of a kind of a more intimate conversation, if you like, with those of you that are really interested in the type of work that I do here at the Tony Tompkins Show. It's an important innovation for me, and it's an experiment, and I thank Cosmin for being the first, and I hope you're not the only one who subscribes to my membership, and that there will be others that will join in as well, so that we can become. So I've got another one. Thanks, Wiz, and thanks very much. Beautiful. Got two now, two members. Let's just see that. Let's just see them roll in, because it will be quite exciting. And even if it's just two members, we will be having a conversation about things that are important to you, a direct conversation with you about the issues that you wish to talk about. So thanks, Whoosh. I really do appreciate that as well. Anyone else there, please join in, because it's a new beginning for me, and it's a new sense of understanding as to what YouTube is all about and how I can get, I guess, paid for the work that we do. So all done, all said. Today I've got Daniel. Now, those of you that haven't met Daniel before, I'll get him to introduce himself in just a moment. But Daniel is someone of the Muslim faith. He has his own YouTube channel, which is in the description. I suggest you check on that just to check out Daniel's site. But this is an opportunity also to talk to Daniel about issues in relation to the Muslim community. And I'm going to ask you, the first question I'm going to ask Daniel in just a second is, what does he experience Islamophobia? And I don't know the response to any of that, and but he will offer us some ideas as to about what it is to be a Muslim in this country, and what does it mean also to be an immigrant to this country, because he has lived overseas. So, so someone says, JG says $13.99 a month. Apple must be taken. No, YouTube, Google take their cut. Believe me, it's a third. So I'm letting you know that to start with. And Smudgley unsubscribed in protest. I don't know what you're unsubscribing from, because you either join or you don't join. You don't have to. You can still be a part of this process if you like. So I don't know why you'd unsubscribe, but nevertheless, I'll leave that up to you. I'm simply trying to do the best that I can to earn some money from this process, so that I can pay for all the equipment I bought, basically. So I'll just bring in Daniel, and we'll have a conversation about the first point that I wanted to raise. Good day, but Daniel, good to see you, mate. How's it going?
Thank you so much, Tony, to be back on your show. So it's fantastic.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you back. Now, the first question that I wanted to ask you, which I sort of mentioned to you before we went to air, and that is Islamophobia a thing, and is it an experience that you've had? So could you talk to us a little bit about your experience about a Muslim in the Australian community, mate?
Well, my personal experience has been by far the great experience. Having interactions with the Aussies have been really wonderful people. Many of them are wonderful people. They believe, I think, in humanism. I think much of their values are more secular orientated, progressive, emergent culture, and all of that diversity sort of thing. But at the same time, you do have people who are reserved and conservative a bit on the right side, and you do encounter people. I mean, I did encounter people like that for sure, but nothing as outstanding up until something happened in one of the jobs that I had. But my wife, if you're talking about personal experience, my wife did have um, you know. Remarks made at in the public spaces in the city as well as in the suburbs, because she has this covering on her head that she would go out and about, and these days it's come down a bit. Like, it was when I came here like 12 years ago, and in the beginning of those years is when we sort of faced that from the public, who would just cruise on their cars and stick their finger up or yell at us and stuff like that, because I had my wife with me. Otherwise, they would not recognize me as a Muslim per se. And I think even in among the conversations that I've had with Aussies, like one-to-one conversations where I just made them very clear that I was a Muslim, they weren't really racist. I didn't feel that they were racist. I think some of them engaged with me in a very civilized manner, even though they knew that I was a Muslim, and we had a chat about religion and faith. And but you do have that class as well, because having lived the earth 40 plus years, I know for sure there's bad apples everywhere, and that's just part of life, human life, and human societies and communities. It happens in my country. We had problems in my own country where northern regions migrated to southern regions. Like, I live south of India, so when there were migrations from the north of India to south of India, you had similar response from many citizens out there. So it's sort of same thing. People get agitated for newcomers when newcomers come and pose a challenge, because the flux of incomers to Australia is all sort of mixed, not necessarily Islamophobic, but you have all sorts of people coming to Australia.
Yep. Got
kind of exacerbates the problem. Yeah.
Daniel, got a question here from GJ, and I just
Yeah.
before we go up, I wasn't aware of the amount that I was charging. I might have to just change that. Might have to put a level in for $5. I think I can do that. So for those of you that are saying $5 would have been fine, which is JZ, which is fine by me. I'm not into making lots of money, so I'll see if I can put a level in there for joining that is only $5. So let me know. But he has a question he wants to ask. And the question is this one, so I'll bring it up for you. And thanks, JJ, I appreciate that. It is Sunni versus Shia Islam. Is that comparable to Christian versus Catholicism, or can Daniel elaborate the difference?
Yeah, like Sunni versus Shia is a political divide, a schism dating back to like the mid 7th century. It's sharply political schism, but later evolved as a theological schism. Okay, but the start off is a political schism, dealing with power structure and contesting for the authority on the Islamic world. But the schisms in Christianity are also political in nature, especially when the Pope was involved as the key authoritative figure, but not so much like it unraveled within Islam. So the schism in Christianity between Catholics and Protestants and the fights that they've had over a period of time sort of is an analogous example or an arrangement. You can sort of understand that from that lens for sure. But within Islam, it's sharply political, and there has been civil wars associated with Shia and the Sunni. The very first civil war in Islam. Yeah.
Okay, so the difference? He's asking about the comparison between Christian and Catholicism. Can you make
Yeah,
a comparison between those two as well?
The Protestant faith in Christianity and Catholic faith in Christianity, the schism between them and the fights that they've had, sort of is a analogous, event. You can have a comparison. You can draw a comparison there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to change. Someone said the audio for you was a little bit down, so I'm just trying to increase that, mate. So I'm just jumping that up.
Particularly the wars that have been fought in Europe between Catholics and Protestants can be equated with the Sunni and the Shia tension and killings and stuff like that. Those two go hand in hand, if you want to compare that.
Yep. Okay. I'm not having much luck here with any of this. So if you just talk up a little bit, mate, or get your microphone closer to you so that people can hear you a little bit better, would be good. Take it from me, from not being long experienced living in Australia. So this is JP has put this up, so we'll just go to this one as well. Tony, take it from me. From my long experience living in Australia, racism is minimal as long as I'm able to convert fluently in English. That's the biggest barrier breakdown. You were from India, I think. Is that right? Your background is Indian. Were you fluent in English when you first came here?
Yeah, absolutely. I was.
Right. So there was no, and your partner was as well, I'm assuming.
No, we didn't really experience a language discrimination, or unable to sort of maybe be proficient. Even my kids, I think one of my kids was given special attention at school to learn speaking better, but that's about it. We never experienced some form of racism concerning or centered around language abilities. Never.
Yeah.
But it's only my wife did encounter, and I was a witness to it. I was with her a couple of times that happened, and even besides, when I was not with her, I've heard reports from her that she was made remarks public in a public space, where especially by motorists who just drive past her.
Oh, really?
And they yell at her, and stick fingers out and stuff like that. So that did happen, but not lately. It happened 8 years ago or something like that.
How did you?
Over this period of time, there's been much more influx of immigrants. So I think the far right have sort of understood, and they're getting along much better, I suppose.
Well, I hope so. Someone did raise this particular point. So this one, I've got a few things here that people are raising, which we need to talk about. Racism is minimal as long as I'm able to convert fluently. So the argument there is that if you able to speak fluent English, then you're more accepted than if you're struggling to understand what someone's saying and they're speaking English, or you're struggling to interpret what they're saying. So I guess they're kind of issues that kind of, I don't know, encourage racism maybe. I don't know the right language to use.
I don't necessarily think that to be the case, unless it becomes an impediment. For example, you have workers at your place and they're not able to converse with you and explain that to you. That may become an impediment, and why people might get given pink slips at their jobs and asked to go. That sort of explains why that would happen. But otherwise, as far as you're socially mingling with people, I don't think that's an impediment at all. I don't think that sort of a racism exists.
Right.
Maybe at the workplaces, yeah.
Right. So someone raised another issue here. I just want to make a comment, and I'll come back to this. Remind me to come back at the end. So the survey that I was asking was, is Australia a racist nation? We've got 24 votes. 75% say yes, and so that 25% obviously say no. So I think this is an interesting conversation to remember that racist language direct to Italians. So Dee was saying, I'm old enough to remember the racist language directed to Italians and Greeks. and someone else. I'm trying to find this one I saw earlier. Um, so this is the one. I wanted to bring this up from Nella. So thanks, Nella, for this. I think this is an important notion we need to start. I always thought we Australians were not racist. So why is it that dreadful Pauline Hanson's becoming so popular? And so the question for me around that, I don't know what you think about this, Daniel, but is racism becoming a point of discussion? Because Pauline Hanson now is talking about mass migration and what that means, and that all Muslims are bad and all those sort of ridiculous type comments. Do you think that that adds to, is it a helpful addition to the debate on racism, or do you think it is unhelpful?
I think it's sort of helpful, especially from what we have seen in the recent past, in the couple of years, in the last couple of years, where there has been white Australians taking to streets and calling for white Australian policy, and with Pauline Hanson sort of backing this movement and also making political comments from the highest offices. It sort of adds up and aggravates the situation for newcomers who aren't really um, forward looking towards integration. Remember this, that some of the Muslim communities that have immigrated to Australia, they have developed what are called as ghettos, and that is a natural sort of eventuality for Muslim communities, especially who are centered around faith, and they would need a premise where they would congregate for faith reasons. So that sort of galvanizes their ghetto formation. For example, Lakemba could be one of those places in Sydney where this has happened
So
at a
could you just clarify us what you mean by ghetto? Because ghetto conjures up the American version of ghetto, which is low income, if any income at all,
okay.
and
I didn't really
poverty.
mean
So
low
you
income.
don't mean that sort of, not, just to clarify that for us.
I didn't really mean economic ghettos. I just said for faith reasons, these communities they gravitate and settle around a place of worship.
Yeah.
So that's what happens, and the result is places like Lakamba, where Pauline might feel she's out of place, or she might feel she's uncomfortable walking into streets where there's Muslims and there's hijabis and people with beard and stuff like that with their traditional attires. That might throw a sense of scare in people like Pauline Hanson, who are not really up to opening up and being brave. She might be, I don't know how she would fare if she went into Northern Territory, where she would encounter Aborigines, First Nations peoples in their traditional attires, or however they live these days. That might be equally daunting for her, because I think Pauline sort of wants or would like to realize where there is white dominance, and even if she is welcome to immigration, she would want immigrants to come and help out in situations where Australians might need help. That's one of the comments I think that's come out of Peter Malinauskas, where he has said, we need immigrants to give you a feed, wash yourself up, and clean your bum. I think if this is how even Peter from the Labour Party would like to look at why he needs immigrants into this country, that's a bit debilitating or disrespectful for why he needs immigrants in this country. Okay, but if that is the picture with which, if that's the framework with which white Australians operate, I think it's not going to be a healthy sort of situation, socially speaking. I lived in I visited UK a long time ago. This was around 17, 18 years ago. And what I noticed was this, that the Asiatic communities that lived in the UK, and most of these Asian immigrants to UK were basically from the Empire times, the British Empire times. And what I noticed was shocking, that they had never assimilated. Like I could see pockets where just whites hung out and pockets where just Asians hung out. And that was like shocking to me. And that kind of a situation is not a healthy situation for the future of Australia, where whites would hang out and the Asians and the immigrants would hang out separately. That's not an ideal situation where you need to have a nation building sort of portfolio to Australia. Australia seeing that it's still very young. Yeah.
So one thing that you said that I found interesting, well, I found a lot of what you said interesting, but this particular point about Pauline Hanson feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an element of truth probably in that. Need to ask Pauline about it, but I doubt whether she'll give you a straight answer anyway. But this notion that when she's amongst a group of people that are different to her, whether they be Indigenous or whether they be from the Middle East or wherever they might be from, when she's amongst those people, for some particular reason, she might feel uncomfortable. Do you think that that's a way? Well, firstly, does that contribute to racism? Does it distort a person's view of their own sense of self-importance and specialty? And does I guess at the end of the day, this is really about them not being comfortable with who they are, so they feel uncomfortable when they're with a group of people that appear to be different to themselves.
A lot of it is psychology and subconscious mind. Obviously, when you hang out, I mean, even birds, they hang out with their kind. They would readily become uncomfortable hanging out with a different species because they start pecking on each other. A similar sort of behavior happens in human societies as well.
But but we are all the same species, are we not?
We are, but culturally, we have different traditions. And what happens is in human societies, when you mingle, even at school, I mean, even if everyone was white, you still have some people called out as odd ones that don't really fit the group, right? The peer group. So humans are very pecky in nature, even though we are one species. So any differences, the differences immediately stand out and we start pecking on them on their differences. So that sort of a thing is deeper in our psychology. And even when we have civilized greatly and we still go in, we can clearly see the odd man out because the way that you dress, the way you speak, the accent. So there are so many parameters with which the subconscious works with and develops familiarity. Any differences will stand out, and the subconscious will inform you that he's not one among us. And that's how the subconscious mind works with human beings. So one has to be highly civil, highly rational, pragmatic to overcome those emotive signals.
But are we?
Our
I guess
mind
I
to be
look.
able
I
to
agree
engage
with
in.
you, and I'm sure many people will. But is it then a learned behaviour to not see people who are different? You know, see people who I don't know, are intellectually different, who are intellectually challenged, who have got physical disabilities. Is it important for us as a society then to be able to understand that they have just the same rights that anybody else has, regardless of their disability, and regardless of their colour of their skin or their religious affiliation or whatever it is? Isn't it important for us to be educated to understand that that's not important?
Absolutely, this is a learned behavior just as much as walking is. The motor skills are, because these deep-rooted behaviors sort of control the human outlook very much, often in ways we don't really realize. So schools are for this very reason, to celebrate the differences and to move forward as a unified group, which will define the future success of this particular community. Rather, what we have done to schools is horrible thing. We have handed out schools to a bunch of liberals and labor party people, unions, or who have an agenda in our schools, that is to produce more tailored and more skilled and sharp labor. And the liberals are happy with that kind of model running down in schools, and the labor party as well are very delighted to have such a model run in the schools. I'm extremely unhappy with what is happening at schools. Basically, schools must be to celebrate social cohesion, diversity, human rights, people's basically rights of everybody to have a good life and well-being, rather than producing robots to supply to predatory capitalists.
Yeah, so someone said here, Woozle said, who's one of my members, thank God, has said that, bring it up, white child raised in a Catholic family with a racist granddaddy. He's talking about himself. I had to unlearn a load to step on the road to racism recovery. Still think I have a way to go. And I think there's an element of truth in that, isn't there? The way we've been socialised by our parents. I can remember. I remember when I was a kid, and I don't know where it came from because I can't say that my parents were overtly racist, but they must have had racist views, or the community in which I lived had racist views. Because I can remember Daniel having a go at a young woman, a girl actually, it wasn't a woman, a girl a little bit younger than myself because of the colour of her skin, and making myself feel sick as we ridiculed her about the colour of her skin. To this day, I feel extremely ashamed of that. And then I went to a school, which I hastened to add was a denominational school, it was a Christian school, in which there was no sense of limitation in terms of a person's disability. And even those in the school that had disabilities were encouraged to be as athletic and were cheered on in a way which this day makes me feel very proud. So those two contrasting experiences of being very young and putting someone down, and then going to high school and having a completely different experience where the school itself supported people no matter what their disability was. And that second lesson has taught me a great about life. And I think that's the point, isn't it? That we need to be encouraged to think more positively about people rather than seeing just the negative that is portrayed by the society or seems to be validated through people like Pauline Hanson. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. My wife is a teacher, and she did provide this feedback to me, that primary school kids are much more welcoming, embracing each other, having very social, sort of a very good social atmosphere for everybody around them. But as soon as these very primary school kids, get into high school, their behavior sort of changes, and that change sort of reflects where they come from, their parentage, the sort of talk goes on in their homes, and the difference becomes apparent when these high school kids hang out in circles of their own kind. And even the efforts that go on to educate them on the books largely go ineffective and inadequate, because the sort of feedback that I got from her observations is this: that kids, as they graduate grades, they go up 8, 9, 10 year 10, year 11, year 12, the separation becomes more and more vivid and more prevalent. So the sort of the behavior sort of determines the outcomes, and these behaviors are actually bred in a space which we call home. So a lot of the parental guidance can change, and a lot of the narrative that's picked up from the television can also help change towards positivity. But with people like Pauline Hanson, who sort of reiterate this, and even some social media people. Have you heard of Kangaroo Jack? It's more popular on TikTok.
No, don't follow TikTok, so you can inform
so
me.
very, very, very sort of anti-immigration sort of mindset, and these sort of social pitches can only divide and hinder unity building and cohesion, strengths of the society.
Smudsley's put up one here which it resonates with me too. And thanks, Smudsley, and I hope you don't unsubscribe from my channel because you're so valuable. When I was little, I was racist towards Japanese people because of my grandfather's influence, because of World War II. His father and uncles were killed. And I can remember too that I had relatives who would not buy Japanese products because of what the Japanese did during the war. And it's quite an interesting analysis, isn't it? Because at that time, you could understand how people felt about Japanese people. But we don't feel the same way about Japanese people today, unless you're Donald Trump reminding the Japanese Prime Minister that he wasn't told when they bombed Pearl Harbor. So, yeah, it's kind of like, and it's changed. And I wonder whether that, I don't know what you think about it. Well, tell me. I don't know what the racism, the face of racism changed? Has it moved away from World War II, Japanese, and even the Germans, to a different target almost? Has the target now become Muslims, people of faith? Has ISIS added to all of that fear again against a certain group of people? Has it changed because now there's all this focus on the color of a person's skin and how we may determine who that person is based on the color of the skin because we think about where they've come from and what religious belief they might have and so forth. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the political factors determining racism are separate, and they can be resolved or reconciled over a period of time when those tensions drop down and there is political alliance with those earlier countries who were hostile to each other, like for example how Japanese and Americans have reworked their relationship after those atomic bombings of Japan. So those things can heal a much faster at a much faster rate than differences that are innate. Like for example, we would be less tolerant of certain races to come and live in our neighborhoods just because there is no apparent reason why not, but just because. And but I think a lot of the intellectual contribution that really happens from these integrating cultures will define and forecast the future racism behavior. For example, many of these immigrants who come down, they come down as professionals, medical practitioners, pharmaceutical practitioners, and whatnot, and even people who immigrate here to look after the aged care. That's a salient feature too. So these families who interact with these individuals from different cultures sort of helps bind the cultural difference. And I think these sort of contributions will eventually make a positive or create a positive outlook. But as far as you have people like Pauline Hanson, who time and again sort of repeat these things, and even Peter Malinauskas, the kind of loose statement, I think he has lost the how should I say this? He has lost the sharpness of his of what he is or why he is there as a premier of South Australia. More often that he just advertises a lot of entertainment biz around that he's doing in Adelaide. I think he has lost his role for why he functions as a premier. Like these authoritative figures are like father-like figures, and their primary duty is to look after everybody.
Yeah.
In their constituency, and not really demean certain classes of people for certain types of work. That's not a what is the word? Help me with the word, Tony.
Well, it's not helpful. I mean, two things that Malinauskas has done, which I disagree with entirely, was the reference to aged care and people wiping people's bums. That was a misspoke, and that was wrong, and does indicate to some extent how he views immigrants, I guess. Is that all there? I mean, you're an immigrant, you're an engineer, so, and also, I need to say that I go to a medical centre where they're all immigrants. They're all Palestinian doctors, and they're of Islamic faith, and every one of these doctors that I've seen in this centre are fabulous. And I really like what you say about if you go to these places that it does diminish the version of racism that people will have, because they'll see competent people of varying races doing the same jobs that expect a white English-speaking person to do as well. So I think that's a really good point. And the other thing about Malinauskas that pisses me off was what he did in Writers' Week, and
Yeah,
preventing that woman from talking about her book, which was criticising Israel and the genocide in Gaza.
yeah,
These are terrible. I think they're terrible, terrible mistakes. I need to say I didn't vote for Labor for the first time in
same.
this last election. I didn't, because I knew they
Yeah,
were going to get in anyway. It made no difference to me. But it was kind of
yeah,
like a protest vote against those
yeah.
things that I think that Menonascus had done that was
Mm,
just wrong. And
mm,
they, we're in an environment at the moment, Daniel, where we need to be mindful of the divisiveness that those comments from politicians cause.
mm,
Just
mm,
the same as Pauline Hanson making that comment about all Muslims are bad people is the same
mm,
sort of thing. It's divisive. So
mm,
I'd really be interested to know what you think about what are the less divisive ways. How I really like that comment about seeing professionals who are of a different faith and different backgrounds doing the work and appreciating what they do. I think that's a great
mm,
point. But
mm.
what else do you think can be done in order to manage and deal with the divisiveness that we do see taking part in our community? I just need to say at this point that we've got 35 votes. Is Australia a racist nation? 69% are saying yes, 31% are saying no. And can the 31% tell us why they don't think it is? That would be really helpful. But what do you think? What is causing this divisiveness?
Yeah, I think it's again going back to how human beings operate. We are basically fundamentally tribal in nature, and all human beings are. We stick with our families, with our grandparents, with our parents, with our uncles and aunts, and that's our community. That's how we start off, and it slowly expands outwards. But we already have a tribe, and that tribe has color, has language, has a behavior, okay, which is different. Immediately you will see these differences when you interact with other tribes who have a different accent, different language, different food, different outlook. So these differences stand out, and what happens is basically you can't really inculcate these changes within your own lifestyle because you're used to certain ways of living. So obviously there is this barrier that you can never sort of bridge, because the way you live, the food you eat, the way you dress, the language you speak, uh, fundamentally is tribal. And there's always going to be this barrier, even in the United States, for example. The blacks have been there for a very long time, and they have outstanding contributions, especially in the field of sports and also in the field of intellectual progress. But you still see today, obviously, there is some form of bridging that's taken place, but you still see today blacks marrying blacks, whites marrying white, and the sort of the outstanding differences still are prevalent. The food, the culture, the speech, even the way the blacks speak, it's still not the way the whites speak in America, no matter even high ranking officials. That tells you what? That tells you cultural stagnation. So the cultures stagnate and they don't assimilate. And whatever you do, the cultural sort of programs, the arts and culture Department of Arts and Culture puts out there for integration still is inadequate. And I think it's up to people to see the good ones and the evil ones, and then cohabitate with the good ones and leave alone the evil ones. I think that is a trajectory that can be really taught and processed, some form of a process laid out. So societies can march on what is good, ignoring what is evil. So,
Can you explain that? I like that idea about cultural. What do you call it? Cultural dissemination, or you used a terminology just a minute ago that I thought was quite interesting, which is the division of culture that sit within our communities and the inability for us to be able to accept the other culture, I think is what you're saying, is
Yeah, yeah,
and staying in our own track, if you like, uh,
yeah.
to refuse to shift or to move to accept that there are people that are different to ourselves. And does this sense of division come about because of that lack of ability or us refusing to be able to accept that that other cultures are as valid as our own?
No, the fact is you're just too comfortable in your life. You don't feel a need to change over or to receive a change. So the same applies to everybody. It applies to the people of color and blacks, and it applies to the whites. So everybody has their life, their chores and their duties they're comfortable doing, and they do in their own ways. And they eat, they cook in their own ways, and they speak in their own ways. They have leisure in their own ways. Even all of this cannot be assimilated because the assimilation comes with these differences that are not really palatable to the psychology. Okay, the way I relax at my house would be different from the way whites would do, and it doesn't really become palatable. You know what I mean? So some of these are can be perceived as gross from the other side. And these are the sort of behaviors that are innate to human beings, who we are and how we are brought up. And there is no need for assimilating at this level. But what is important is good becomes appreciated and evil becomes condemned. That's the I think fundamental a measure with which societies can actually function and fruition
Yeah,
together.
depending on who you think is good and who you think is evil, isn't it?
That again, that again is not based on subjective thinking, but we
No,
have the
no, it's not.
basics of the law to work with. So you work with the law, and it should be good.
So there's like I've always been curious about how in the United States, a lot of the basketball teams and the football teams are mainly black African Americans, and how they, the racists could sit there and cheer on that team because and they're, are they aware? Are they even aware that this is mainly a different group of people to what they're accustomed to? And that would be spitting at them and yelling at them and abusing them in the streets, but because they're playing for their sporting team, they get accolades and support. And I often think, I'm amazed and intrigued by the number of Sudanese men that are playing Australian rules football now. I think they're fabulous, quite frankly, and they need to be celebrated for the opportunity that's been provided for them, I guess, to be able to play at the highest possible level. And so I celebrate that stuff. But a lot of people who are racist probably do celebrate it with a different perspective, maybe. I don't know what that perspective could possibly be, but is it all about the sporting element? They're playing for my team, therefore I support them. Whereas if I met them outside, I'd probably treat them completely differently.
Yeah, I think a lot goes into competitiveness. So some of these fields are very highly competitive, and you have to stand out to be able to get selected. So obviously, people with strength, skill, and talent, they will surface, and they will get inducted into the teams, and they get celebrated for sure. But in places where the competitiveness is low tier, for example, at workplaces where it's all controlled highly, very well, with having a good relationship with your boss, just a nick, having a slight little nudge there with your boss, that sort of removes the merit thereof, and it becomes less competitive and more of obedience to the boss. And that's where you find racism prevail. And those are the two areas of where societies sort of interact in a public way, and racism prevails in one space, and the other space it's removed because of competitive nature of the game.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point. I was just looking at a post that someone put up here. Now, this is an Australian culture, and I thought it was interesting. So, this is S.S. Smith responding, I think, to Smudge. And you might need to clarify this a little bit for us, but I thought this was an interesting comment. Putting shit on your mates. So this is an Australian cultural thing. as you're probably well aware too. Putting shit on your mates. You call someone a bastard, you silly old bastard. And that's kind of accepted as being, well, you're a good mate, and I think you're doing something that's not appropriate, or just saying, I love you because I think you're a silly old bastard. Copping shit from your mates builds character. And it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because I think that, well, does it build character? In what way does giving someone or putting someone down build character? I know it's an Australianism, but does it build or add to someone's character if you're saying they're a silly bastard? I don't think it's supporting them about who they are either. I think it is.
I think it's basically because the heritage of Australia goes back to convicts and goes back to miners who've wielded extreme authority over people whom they put to work, and that kind of got distilled down in the culture, and it became a buddy type thing to demean somebody and take them under your control. But gone are those days. It's no more applied. I mean, if you treat the way you were treated to your kids these days, they will tell you off. So it's not the same Australia that you are living right now, because you can't even get your dream homes these days. So Australia has changed quite a lot from when your grandparents had a life. So even the language has evolved, the norms have evolved, changed, and the kids no more accept some of those things. Although I'm pretty privy to how the kids are being raised here with all the swear words, and it becomes really extremely difficult for older people to manage them, especially in places where they interact with kids. But certainly the norms have changed, and for the good, though. And you can only expect better if you reformed the school culture, not so much producing robots, but producing human beings for human rights.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, fantastic idea. But I think that we need to be asking ourselves too: do words matter in all of this? And there's some interesting. I've just been trying to scan some of these conversations that are happening here, and people are having the best time by the looks of things. I saw Daniel Cooper agreeing with Sheldon. And I think, because I know some of these people, I think, what in the fuck is going on here? Someone says, someone says, my dad's favourite player was Andrew McLeod. And I guess what I need to ask you was, was your dad a racist? Or did he show some racist tendencies? So that's Heidi the sausage. So, yeah, and, that's a great point, isn't it? Sometimes your favourite player are the very people that you wouldn't invite around for tea, or that you would be slamming if because of your own version of racism. Yeah, interesting conversations. Soul Country and Murdered. Yeah, and I agree with the community here too. I'm just going to pop this one up as well. Australia stole the country and murdered Indigenous people. To our shame, we did. And I kind of wonder, that raises another point with me, Daniel. To what extent does our history tell us about who we are and how we can do things differently? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's look, again, I think a lot about subconscious mind, how it impacts our behaviors and models our future. And greed is a factor, and hardly people can rid themselves of greed. You need extreme discipline to get rid of yourself, liberate yourself from greed. This is not an easy coming behavior, or a talent, I should say, or a sacrifice, I should say. It's not easy coming, because babies suck nipples, toddlers suck lollies, and adults suck on perks. So this is just what we do, what we've done.
I was a bit fearful that you were about to make us an R-rated program.
Really?
So anyway, sorry, go on.
Okay, so this is what we do by nature, right? So humans are greedy by nature, and now we have to learn and grow out of from being greedy. So this doesn't really come easy. And once people get involved in business and they're making money, they want to make more money out of it, more money out of little money, more money out of little money, and they have to get onto positions of authority in order to suck more and siphon more into their accounts. This sort of leads us on a trajectory to always condemn certain groups of people as less than us. Okay, so it's capitalism versus labor force.
So are
So
you
this is
saying?
always going to be there.
Sorry about interrupting, but are you saying that we are in effect monetizing hate?
Well, it's very obvious, and that's what we did when
It is
Aussies
to me
came
as
here.
well. It's good to hear you say it. I think it's a really insightful thing to say. Yeah.
That's exactly what Aussies did when they came here. They put poor Aborigines, the First Nations people, to work.
Well, firstly, we
immediately.
weren't
Yeah.
Aussies when we first came here. We were British.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the British.
Yeah,
Okay, the British
when
put
they came. Yeah.
the British put them to work immediately, and that's what we do, because we know how to become bigger. And when you have power, you want to wield that power to become bigger and much bigger and much bigger. And that's what exactly what we do even today. And that's part of the problem that we need to solve as a society, as a progressive society. Okay, and that is to control labor exploitation. I think Australians do a great deal of controlling labor exploitation, a great deal of work, but it can only become better. We can't stagnate. We cannot afford to stagnate. Okay, so I'm in favor of reforming this culture of labor exploitation and take freedoms to next level.
I was just wondering whether you have lived in other countries, haven't you?
Yeah.
Can you make a comparison between what you experienced around racism in other countries versus Australia?
Well, my own country, India, for example, is a racist country because racism is rooted in religion and tradition. Because in India is a very highly bureaucratic, highly a class-based society, and the classes emerge out of religion and tradition.
Yeah, and you have a caste system too, don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Which which is purely the definition of racism, if you like.
yeah, absolutely. So you have these higher classes that the I mean, I don't want to name anybody here. I don't want to make you intimate with that knowledge that happens in India. It's irrelevant. But the fact is, it's a class-based society where the higher classes, the white collars, sort of allocate certain types of work and jobs to lower tier people whom they consider low tier, and they would not marry with them, socialize with them, and they are blue collar jobs. And the authorities who are white collar jobs, managers and stuff like that, they would want ethics at workplace beyond what can be written down on the book. So they want complete obedience, complete buttering, all of that sort of tradition gets synthesized in a workplace. And I've experienced this personally, but I was never too much into worrying about it because I had a different upbringing and I didn't really care anybody. I didn't even really care about losing a job at my workplace, and the same happens to me here in Australia too. So basically, people expect at authority, people expect obedience, not just allegiance and loyalty, but obedience. It's there, but you don't notice it. You don't talk about it, but it's there, right? And this is what defines a slaving culture. We have come we have come a long way from when human beings were slaves, but there is obviously a point that we have stagnated, and we can do much better to liberate ourselves.
But we need to acknowledge at the same point that the human trafficking business in the world generates more money than does the drug industry, and so as a worldwide phenomenon, I guess, human trafficking is still and making people slaves. And then I look at the way men treat women and the manosphere and all these other ideas that I talked about in a video the other day are all about enslaving enslaving women. So this notion of enslaving, I think, still happens. And some of the things that you're talking about just there are more subtle in our society and probably not as evident as they
Yeah.
would be in, say, the Indian society where there is the caste system.
Yeah.
But I guess there is an effort to break through some of those ideas as about this. So where do you think equality fits? Like, what makes, in your view, a more equal type of society?
I think a fight is what it takes to put things into perspective. So if I mean, where there is authority, there is exploitation. Okay, and that starts off with a man and a woman. So a man being a strong agenda, physically strong, what and whatnot, tries to exploit, or doesn't even try. The weaker gender, which is a female in this case, appeases
I just warning you, there are feminists on board who
Yeah.
may object to some of that language.
I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist. So I'm not a misogynist here. I'm just telling you the science behind how genders work. All right. This is how genders work.
I'm just putting up a warning for you. That's all. I appreciate what you're saying. Just as a warning, I can see my
But
wife
this is how
diving in
this
on
is
this
how
one.
genders work, which is very unfortunate. Partly because we are not educated, partly because the males are not educated how to deal with women, and women are not educated to learn their rights and to reserve their rights. So often they catch up to appease the males, and this is how the society is based off. All right, and that's where exploitation begins. You try to appease somebody. That's the beginning of exploitation, and males exploit the women, and authoritative figures at workplaces exploit their laborers, and the administration then exploits people, their constituencies, and the lobbyists who control the administration exploit them. So basically, it's an hierarchy where exploitation happens, and we are not like animals, who just kill for a meal and then they pretty much go dormant. We don't do that. We have storages, we have refrigerators. We kill and morade never endingly, and that's what we do. Okay, so we have authority and we exploit that. We are best at exploiting from the point of view of being an authoritative figure, right? That's rooted in our nature. But then what can liberate us is education. We got to educate ourselves, and both men and women have to become aware, and employees have also need to become aware. Why are they given to work so much? That's the question people need to ask in the modern times. Why in the modern age people need to work like donkeys and dogs? Why?
Yeah, good point.
Do you ever ask these questions?
That's probably a discussion for another time, but it's a great point.
Sure.
To store that one away, we will get back to that. Someone said, and I agree with it, that is only an example of strength. There are different versions. This comes back to what you said about men being stronger than women. I think, and this is where I think we fall into a trap. We try to identify differences that sit between male and female, as opposed to trying to better understand the things that are the same, and that there is a struggle for equality, and I guess trying to understand where that inequality sits amongst different groups of people, male or female, black versus white, Islamic versus Christian, and so on. There's these differentiations that sit there, and we tend
One word.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that word, there's one word, and that word is appeasement. The moment a party appeases,
I understand. I think I have a version of appeasement, but perhaps you could explain that to us in greater detail.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, the moment there is strength and there is weakness, so weakness have to take a leap of faith to get things done with the party that is wielding strength. So there's no way that the weakling is going to get things done unless that group goes through appeasement with the group that's standing on strength. All right. So this appeasement happens all the time. It happens between genders. It happens in various sections and strata of the society, and this is where um, looking down happens, and undermining happens, and authoritative exertion happens, and these groups who are weaklings become expendables. Okay, and this is the trajectory. You can't deny this. This is just how nature functions, and this is where we sit in this natural order of things. And therefore we need human rights, and therefore we need rights, and therefore we need education. So because education is the best force with which you can surmount even you can actually fight off the greatest opposition and rebellions. Education is the best thing. So we got to educate all members of society. That's what I'm saying time and again. I don't have to repeat here myself, but education is that tool with which you defeat racism, basically.
Then how?
Yeah.
So there's an example of this which I think is really important to try and understand when one talks about appeasement. So when we're looking at the Iran war and the power of the United States versus Iran, the Iranians are far better, believe it or not, I think this is true. The Iranians are far better educated people than they are in the United States. So given what you just said, where is the appeasement in that conflict, given that one is intellectually, this is probably an area for debate, but nevertheless I'll say it. One is an intellectually superior group of people compared to the other, but one has all the weapons. Where's the appeasement? How does that take shape, given what you just said?
And precisely is why we have a fight, because they are not appeasing the United States. Because they're educated, they are not into it. They're not like Venezuelans. They're not going into it.
Well, they're not extremely subservient, given the IRGC rather, and the influence that the military has over them, I guess. So they are. Okay. So if you could just come back to that. Sorry, I interrupted. Where's the appeasement in that sense?
Like I believe Iranians are not having an approach with appeasement. They are not keen on appeasing the United States for their bullying or for their unreasonable demands or forced negotiations, forced trade-offs. I think Iranians basically, not just the administration, but it becomes very obvious when we go into this war that Iranians somehow are daring to just walk publicly in streets unwavered by the bombings that's really happening in their surroundings. So this tells you that the administration is really backed up by the root level populations. All right, so they are with the government, and they are favoring the government stance that the government need not succumb to the demands of the United States. And this is what I'm saying. Education will impart talents, courage, bravery. So then you will not take the pathway of appeasing somebody unreasonably, or at the expense of your dignity. So you stand up and you're ready to sacrifice your life, basically. So that's a fight. That's a fight people need to put up against the bullies. And
so you would argue then that appeasement didn't take place, or hasn't taken place, by the Iranians to start with, because of their I guess proxies throughout the Middle East, and also their attitude towards terrorism. But that would be. But I guess one could argue that is a minority, though. Is it not?
I think there is a pathway towards setting these limits. I think Iranians were comfortable to take those processes and negotiate, but when the limits were hit, I think they called it off. And this is where I think Trump sort of undermined the Iranians' strength, and he pushed buttons on them which he should have never pushed. And he's in this soup right now, where he's feeling the heat and getting his skin burnt. But yeah, I mean,
But
it's just yeah.
I just wonder too whether we're seeing a battle of two intellect. Well, we're seeing a battle of intellectual inadequacies. We're seeing Trump, who's completely ignorant and who doesn't listen to anybody and just goes by his gut feeling, whatever that might be. And we're seeing the Iranians who have planned for this for over 20 years and are fighting back because they want to save their country. And does it mean then that moment of appeasement has gone, that it's unlikely to become a product by which they could use to resolve the conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I saw one of the documentaries of Trump, the way he rose to where he to become who he was, the wealthy man in the States, and then his journey to presidency.
Yeah.
He's doing nothing different now, being a president of the United States, that he hasn't done really before when he became rich. So basically, he is a greedy thug, a blatant liar who doesn't really care that the whole world knows that he's lying. He doesn't really care, and he will come back to you on your face and lies again. So the Americans did not deserve him, but for whatever reason,
well, maybe they did.
Yeah,
this is karma.
maybe they did. That's it.
I reckon for their sense of exceptionalism and their sense of their self-importance in the world, maybe they need to have a kick in the teeth, and maybe Donald Trump's it. Like that. I've lost Daniel for whatever reason. Oh, he's back.
Yeah, it got froze. For some.
Yeah. Glad to see you came back, mate. So I just wonder whether they've sort of developed their own rod for their own back, if you like, by electing someone like Donald Trump. And one of the problems is now, how do you get rid of the bastard? I guess I was just going to bring up so someone has posted something here that I thought we could just refer to. So I really do love your comments. I've often said the people in my comment section are the smartest people on this planet. And I reckon you are. You're just exceptional. And they're having interesting discussions amongst themselves about shit I don't understand. Aboriginal slavery in Australia involved the widespread forced labour, kidnapping and exploitation of Indigenous people, particularly in the pastoral and pearling industries from the 1860s to the 1970s. I agree. And I think these sorts of comments are important to at least acknowledge, Daniel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There are people in this, particularly Indigenous people, who are seeing this sense of slavery and disadvantage continue to this very present day.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I have failed to sort of grapple or comprehend is the point of view of the First Nations people. I've been here for 12 years, and I know they are sufferers in ways that you can't really explain, and that sort of has a ongoing effect to the present generations of them. And what I don't realize, what I don't understand or comprehend is I don't get to see, even though there is all of this voice, the vote for voice, and all of that. But aside, these things aside, I have not seen a coherent voice with which I could become familiar with of what First Nations people feel about themselves and what are their plans for themselves and to the future of Australia, where they would like to sit themselves in the emergent culture in Australia and the future of Australia, both politically speaking and socially speaking. So I want to know these things from them. But somehow in the Australia that I live in, maybe there are things out there, but I've been really active seeking these sort of policy.
Well, I think if you connected with a number of Indigenous activists, you would find the answers that you're seeking. And also, I think that here in South Australia, we do have the Indigenous Parliamentary Group. I forgot what they're called now. We do have that. And of course, there was and they're doing the same in Victoria. And I think that our inability to be able to vote yes for the referendum in 2023 or whenever it was really was an opportunity missed in terms of Indigenous people having a voice to what it was that they believe should be the decisions that should be made that affect them, as opposed to all of us white people telling them how they should live and conduct their lives and what finances should be provided in order to improve them. I think there's lots of things there that could have happened. I just want to do so thank you very much for your $10, Kim Phoenix. I don't know what you mean. A peer character rolling on the floor laughing. So that's a quote. I don't know. I haven't got time to look up Google to figure out where that quote came from. But I do want to say that I do appreciate your contribution of $10. That's greatly appreciated also. So I'm just going through some of the discussions. I don't know. Can you see any of the discussions there at all? Because I just wanted to pick up some of the things that paid slaver owners and repair. So Dee's put something up. I'll bring that up. So Dee says wrong one. Let's try again, Tony. Yeah, I'm not fond of them, and so they're having conversations amongst themselves, which I find really hard to keep up with while we're talking. Not repatriation to the enslaved, and kept it going for an unbelievable long time. Plus, don't finish all through the empire at the one time. And I know that these issues particularly is around the British and what the British have done. And Cosman has also contributed $15. Really appreciate that, Cosman. Thank you very much as well. And Cosman says, I'm disappointed in our vote, comrades. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you for creating this space, and sorry that my language is emotive or sharp. Feedback would be good. Cosman, I'm sure people will give you feedback. And this is the thing about having a comment section on a YouTube channel, is that, as is the case with anything that we write, it doesn't seem to appear to be the same as if we spoke it direct to people. So we understand that, and I do appreciate your contribution, Cosman, as well. And I do need to say that I do have and I apologise for those people who didn't like the idea that I've now trying to monetize my channel by creating a way by which you can join these conversations, and for members, and if you would like to become a member, please subscribe down below. I'm sorry I didn't make it cheaper. The reality was I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and I just punched what was the recommendation from YouTube. So I want to thank you for that. So someone's also said, hit on saw the head. So Hided the Sausage also has said, Samuel Kimo, anyone who voted no, bad karma to them. And it's great having so many people who support the notions around One Nation, and the fact that was a very disappointing result for all of us. And it does lend me to that the question, and I've asked this question before, is Australia a racist nation? And the result is 72% say yes and 28% no. And I want to thank Elizabeth. Thanks, Elizabeth, also for your $5. That's greatly appreciated as well. And anybody who does contribute, I do thank you. So are there any, we've been going for an hour and 14 minutes. I doubt whether we're going to break the record yesterday of 2 hours with my friend Avery. Is there anything you want to say, though, Daniel, in closing, any points you'd like to make about any of the comments that you've seen, about any of our discussions that we've had so far?
Yeah, sure. There's certainly some comments coming from some people that I would love to engage with them, no, but not here on this channel at this point in time, because we're discussing a different topic. But you're most welcome to hover onto my channel and come and ask me those questions in terms of what was appropriate and inappropriate in religion, and I will definitely be honored to give you or provide you with answers over there. And yeah, it's been fantastic coming here on your show, Tony, and I've really enjoyed it. And I hope your audience likes these sort of talks with me. And yeah, I'm good.
And that it is important for people to find the space to communicate with Daniel on his own channel, and we've got that in the connection at the top of this feed. So please feel free to do so. Daniel could pop more about his channel in the comment section as well if he so desires. Stay online. I'll get back to you in a moment, mate, but I'll just say goodbye to everybody. So just hold on if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
And
sure,
and
yeah.
thanks, Daniel, for being on board. He is an incredible individual who has a lot to offer, and I'm hoping that his YouTube channel will become successful as well. So please have a look at that and have a discussion with him about all things Muslim. And I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow I'll be meeting up with Avery again, and we'll be heading back to talking perhaps more about politics than what we did today. And it'll be about the politics of the day, particularly what's happening in relation to Iran, our supply of petrol in this country, and whether or not that's being managed appropriately by the government, and if we'd like to see some changes in that regard. The other issue that we'll be talking about tomorrow is One Nation, and to what extent has there been a flurry of excitement about where One Nation sits at this particular point in time, and whether there's an overreaction to the fact that they have won one seat potentially in South Australia, and that Malinowskis had a landslide election result. And why isn't it that we don't pay more attention to that, and we're focusing just on the surge of One Nation and the collapse of the Liberal Party? So these are questions we'll be asking tomorrow. So join with Avery and myself to be able to investigate that particular issue. In the meantime, I'd like to say thank you very much for being with me. Thank you for stimulating the conversation. Thank you for those people that have joined our membership for the first time today. I only did it a few hours ago, and the membership is increased by 2. I do appreciate it. Please join, because there will be lots of other content we'll be offering as a result of those memberships. And I'd hate to think there are only 2 people we were connecting with, so it'd be nice if you join. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And thank you, Daniel. Take care.
Thanks.